Hi everybody, and welcome to week 4 of Mythical Creatures. This week we're going to talk all about the Fae. But first, let's go over one last time, what exactly is a myth? Well, myths are stories about how the world was created and why certain things happen. Today, the word myth is often used to describe something that is not true. But a myth is not just a made-up story. Myths tell of gods, heroes, and events that a group believes, or at one time believed, to be real. So what exactly is a mythical creature? Well, mythical creatures are supernatural animals, beings, or hybrids that don't actually exist in real life. The term fairy actually originates with the Middle English word fairy, as well as fairy, fayare, and fieri, which were borrowed directly from the Old French fairy as a whole and are known as the Fae. So when you combine all these different kinds of fairies together, you get the Fae. In the late Middle English period, the term fairy meant enchanted, or referred to enchanted creatures. The term fairy is rooted in the word fae, or fe, from fairy, or fairy, meaning realm of the fays. In terms of origin, fairies are a blend of many strands and elements of folk beliefs, speculations about natural or hidden species, ancestral spirits and ghosts or fairy tales, myths and legends, literary compilations, as well as fallen angels and demonic creatures. In other words, there is in fairy lore no single origin. The supernatural being called a fairy is probably one of the most well-known creatures in folklore and fairy tales. There are local and regional variations in folklore, and stories of fairy-like creatures are to be found in nearly every part of the world. Modern perceptions of fairies as diminutive and fragile creatures is actually the responsibility of William Shakespeare and Elizabethan poets. The play A Midsummer Night's Dream is a case in point, which was richly illustrated by Victorian artists. For example, fairies were referred to as little atomies, as small gray-coated gnats. They were also known as nymphidae, flower fairies, or coachmen, fluttering sprites who swim in the air and ride the whirls of dust. The spirits of the air were called sylphs, from the Greek word sylphe, meaning a caterpillar. It is also a reference to the Latin term sylvestris nympha, or nymph of the woods. Fairies were also associated with changeling beliefs, and were sometimes said to secretly swap sickly fairy babies for healthy human ones. There are stories of people saying that the reason their child was sick was because it was actually a changeling. In fact, belief in fairies was at the root of a famous murder in Ireland. In 1895, a man actually killed his wife, claiming that she was a changeling brought to him by fairies. Luckily, the idea of changelings are no longer believed. Fairy entities, in their restricted sense, are unique in English folklore, though these non-human spirits are huge within Celtic and Germanic folk beliefs. Among European folk and fairy tales, the fairies of French and Celtic romances are often merged with the elves of Teutonic myth. Similar stories of fairy-like creatures occur in other European traditions, including the Latin and the Slavic, as well as their historical origin distilled from Celtic, Welsh, and Breton medieval French romances and tradition. In many regions, including China, India, and Arabia, there are the jinns. They are found beliefs in the existence of supernatural, sometimes dwarfish or pygmy-like entities. Their small size and appearance was cultivated in response to the tales of Victorian nursery tales that were read to children. They were seen as a supernatural race existing in the fancy of the folk from North and West Europe. In folklore, fairies are described as humanoid with magical powers and the ability to shapeshift, with a desire for malice and mischief, whose origins can even be demonic. It's also believed that fairies cannot tell lies. In the Celtic culture, there occurs the widespread theme of a race of little people who were actually driven underground by invading tribes. In Scottish folklore, the good fairies, or the Seelie court, are friendly towards humans, whereas the unseelie court, or bad malicious fairies, work their evil against mortals. Therefore, fairies hostile to people are feared because they ruin or steal crops, take our tools and grain, they milk cows and ride horses during the night, blow out candles, and just disrupt households. Their pranks can be a punishment for a perceived wrong. Fairy assistance to humans and mortals is well attested with regard to home, hearth, and farm. Although in general terms fairies are helpful, they are also mischievous and harmful to people if they feel like it. In the household, they will do chores, such as floor sweeping, dishwashing, and tending the fire. The Seelie court, the good fairies of the Scottish lowlands, however, can be hostile to humans if they are displeased. There's also the pixie of southwestern England, which is a tiny elf-like spirit or mischievous fairy dressed in green who dances in the moonlight to the music of frogs and crickets. Sprites live in trees or near rivers and ponds, sometimes eating the bugs that threaten the plants and flowers among them. Aziza, the West African fairy, are shy but helpful. They teach people how to use fire and become better humans. However, they can be less friendly to people who don't show respect for animals and nature. The Asare, a fairy from English folklore, are rare creatures that live in the water and only come to the surface once every 100 years. Asare are only seen in the light of the moon, and if they're exposed to sunlight, they dissolve into the water and are never seen again. In Persia, there are the Peri. They're winged spirits who can be mischievous, but also do good deeds for people. Their enemies are the Deva, who try to capture them and lock them up in iron cages. The Deva hate the good-natured Peri. After all, the Deva were evil spirits, even though the name means a being of shining light. The Menehune live in the lush forests and valleys of the Hawaiian Islands. They enjoy singing and dancing and archery. Supposedly, they carry magic arrows, and when they're fired in an angry heart, it will change that anger into love. Images of fairies have appeared as illustrations, often in books of fairy tales, as well as in video and sculptures. You may be most familiar with Tinkerbell, the Tooth Fairy, or the fairy godmother from Cinderella. The Victoria era was particularly noted for fairy paintings. The Victorian painter Richard Dadd created paintings of fairy folk with a bit of a sinister tone. The fairy doors of Ann Arbor are a series of small doors that are a type of installation art found in the city of Ann Arbor in the U.S. state of Michigan. The first one appeared in the baseboards of the home of Jonathan and Kathleen Wright in 1993. Subsequently, several others were discovered in their home, in the fireplace, and 2 in the kitchen. On April 7, 2005, the first was seen in public on the exterior of Sweetwater's Coffee and Tea. Since then, 10 more have shown up around Ann Arbor, as well as a goblin door parody, and 7 of the original public doors still exist today. Local children believe these are the front doors of fairy houses, and in some cases, small furniture, dishes, and various other things can even be seen behind the doors. 2 teenage cousins, Frances Griffiths and Elsie Wright, played with fairies in the English countryside near Cottingley. Interacting with imaginary fairy friends would probably be considered normal behavior for 10 and 16-year-old girls, but the pair insisted that the fairies were real. They even provided proof in the form of 5 photographs showing little fairy folk playing with the girls. While some dismissed the photos as obvious fakes, many others were not so sure. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of Sherlock Holmes, believed that the fairies were real and wrote a book titled The Coming of the Fairies, in which he discussed the fairies and his conviction that their existence had been proven without any doubt. Many were taken in, and the reality of fairies was the subject of debate among some adults for decades. Finally, in 1983, Francis Griffiths, then 75 years old, confessed that the fairies were cut-out drawings from a book. Though belief in fairies exists to the present day in some places, especially in Ireland, Iceland, Norway, and Scotland, modern families have mostly been sanitized for today's children, and luckily they've lost their murderous ways. You may be surprised to learn that at the beginning of the 20th century, large swaths of rural Ireland and Britain had a steadfast belief in the existence of fairies. The Cherokee Indians in North Carolina refer to fairies as Yun Sunsi. These little people are effectively elf-like natives. The Cherokee have great respect for these elves, as they believe they are spirits belonging to an age before man. One quote from a fairy believer says, "Those who believe that fairies don't exist tend to offer up a scientific reason for their assertion. While science has proven a lot of things, it would be remiss of us, not to mention arrogant, to assume that we understand even a fraction of the mysteries of the universe. If you are adamant that fairies are not real, you will probably be surprised to learn how many disagree." According to a study by the Eastern Virginia Medical School, approximately 2/3 of the American population report having a mystical experience they could not easily explain. Over in Iceland, 55% of people surveyed in 1970 believed that elves definitely existed, or there was at least a strong possibility. Manchester University professor John Hyatt took this photo here in Rossendale Valley, Lancashire. There are many examples of fairies in popular culture today. Here we have Toothiana the Tooth Fairy from the movie Guardians. She is a hummingbird fairy hybrid. Of course, there's Wanda and Cosmo from Fairly Odd Parents, Fawn, Rosetta, Periwinkle, Tinkerbell, Iridessa, Vidya, and Silver Mist from the movie Tinkerbell. There we have Maleficent as a child in the movie Maleficent. She is a dark fae. And then Genie from the movie Aladdin, who is a djinn. To learn more about the fae, check out these amazing books available at OCL. The Element Encyclopedia of Magical Creatures by John and Caitlin Matthews, The Complete Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, and From the Forest by Sarah Maitland. Thank you so much for joining me today and learning all about the fae. I cannot wait to make our fae craft, so stick with me. I'll be right back. Bye. Everybody, and welcome to week 4 of Mythical Creatures. This week we talked about all of the awesome lore and history of the fae. So today we're going to make a fae attractor. I hope you guys are just as excited about this as I am. So the first thing that you're going to need is obviously your Mythical Creatures bag. And inside your Mythical Creatures bag is your fae bag, which I've got all the stuff taken out. Don't worry about that. You'll have your fae bag. And inside of that, you're going to find a selection of different cords and yarn and all kinds of stuff like that. You're going to have 2 of these skewers. I only have one with me right now because the others I've got over here. I'll show you in a minute. 2 skewers, and then a bunch of dowels, and then a selection of little embellishments that all have holes in them for hanging. There's a reason why these are special. So this is a really simple craft, but it does take a little bit of time. So I'm going to show you a lot of close-ups today so that you can really see what I'm doing with the knotting of the cord. So if you have your fae attractor instructions, you'll also be able to refer back to that. So the first thing you're going to do is take one of your skewers here, and you're going to pick your first color of cord. So I've got my cord here and I've got my skewer. Well, this is the part that's it's not confusing. It's just, you really want to follow what I'm doing here. So I'm going to make sure that you're going to be able to see this. So what you're wanting to do is at the end of your skewer, you're going to tie 1/2 of a knot onto your skewer. Just like that. And then you're going to put your finger on top of that 1/2. Turn your skewer around like this and tie another 1/2. I probably should have left myself a little bit more of a tail. That's okay. There we go. That gives us a good knot to start with. So we got 1/2 on one side and 1/2 on the other. Then you're going to turn your skewer. Now this is one of those crafts that you can really do a whole bunch of ways. This is just the way that I'm showing you. If you end up wanting to do something completely different, go for it. Be unique. This is your opportunity to really just go crazy here. So now I want to wrap this cord around the skewer. So I'm going to hold that tied area with one hand like this. And then I'm just going to take that cord and I'm going to wrap it around. You can do this for as long as you want. I recommend really whatever you want. You can do it loosely like this. And then what I do is, I do it loosely and then I pull it tight on one end, nice and tight, and then I just squeeze it down and then I pull it tight again. Look at that. Now I've got a tighter strand here. And another way you can do it is to just wrap tightly. I think this is the tightest way to do it. This is the most secure way. It's not going to come unrolled. And I actually just roll the skewer, not the cord. So like I'm holding the cord firm and then I move the skewer. And that gives a real tight turn. You can see here, this is looser and this is tighter. Once I have like around an inch or so, that's how much I've been doing for my wrapping. So about an inch or so, I'm like, okay, I'm done with this color. And you want to leave a nice long tail. Okay, the tail's going to be used later. So now that I got my nice long tail, I'm going to spin it around one more time and hold it under my finger like that. Take my tail here from around the back through the loop and then pull tight like that. And then we're going to do that one more time. Go around the skewer really loose. See how I went around? Grab that with my fingers through the loop. And pull tight. And that gives me a nice knotted end. See our nice knotted end there? Now I'm going to show you with one more cord so you can really just kind of see what I'm doing. And then I'll show you what a whole skewer looks like already finished. So this one I'm going to learn from my previous one and I'm going to make my tail a little bit longer. That way I don't have to make it more complicated for myself. So I'm doing just 1/2 a knot. This is also the beginning of tying your shoelace. It's the first step of tying your shoelace. This is when the rabbit goes through the hole. If you ever learned that rhyme for tying your shoelace. And then flip it over here. And do that one more time. Rabbit goes through the hole and pull. And now I've got that knot, 1/2 on one side, 1/2 on the other, nice and tight. Hold it firm with my hand. And then I'm going to just 1, pull tight, 2, pull tight. Do it that way. That way we get a nice tight. See, I'm just moving it down with my finger as I go. So I got a gap, move it down. Gap, move it down. Move it down. And nice. we go, look at that. All right, and once I feel like I've got enough, and you see my gold kind of shifted a little bit, that's okay because you can just push it down. Look at that, because basically it just pulled away. So I can just, boop, there, it's back in place. I can even give that gold one a little bit of a tug, really make sure that knot is nice and tight here. There we go. All right, so we're gonna end it the same way we ended the gold one. So we're gonna go around the back. One more time, hold it, end of the cord through the hole, pull tight. Do that one more time. Around the back, through the hole, pull tight, and there we go. Now we've got 2 colors done. Now you have a whole bunch of different colors, and you're gonna have some repeats and some non-repeats, and it's gonna be great, and you can make a pattern. You can only use some colors. You might use all your cord, you might not use all your cord. It's up to you. Instead of making you sit here and watch me do this entire skewer, I'm gonna just skip ahead, and we're gonna pretend I just wrapped this skewer and a whole nother skewer. But actually, I have done that ahead of time to save us a little bit of recording time. So here I've got 2 skewers completely done, and you can see all my cord, it's different. It's different colors, it's wrapped different, my spaces aren't the same. Another thing that you can do to make it so that your cord doesn't unravel quite as easily is you can take that clear glue you have in your Mythology bag and just put like a little bit on your fingers or on a paintbrush and just coat the cord with that glue, and when it dries, it'll hold it a little bit more in place. But fairies, or the fae, really like a lot of color and a lot of uniqueness. So really, it looks good being kind of crazy and wild and different. So there you go. So now that I have the 2 skewers completely covered in cord, and you see all my tails are different lengths. You can see, let me move this out of the way. You can see here, all of my tails are different lengths, and that's totally fine. I actually want it that way. I want my tails to be completely weird. So I'm gonna kind of just make sure everything's out of the way here. All right, so the next part of what you're gonna do is you're gonna pick another cord color, and I'm gonna do this green so that it sticks out. I'm gonna take my 2 skewers, and I'm going to cross them in an X. So you can see I have an intersection here right at the middle of my X. So now it's in an X shape. And I'm gonna take this green cord and I'm gonna put it underneath. Like this. I want all my cord, there's so much cord. I want all my cord out of the way here. So I can pull some of it to the side because I don't want to accidentally wrap up all my cord in this green. So I'll pull it to the side here. There we go. And I'm going to, this is what you're going to hang your Fae attractor with, this cord here. So when you tie it, you want it to be really long on one end and then kind of short on the other end, okay? Because this is going to be your hanger. And this is really simple. I'm going to do that beginning part of tying your shoelace again. Make sure you guys can see. X, rabbit goes through the hole. Tie. Cross over, rabbit goes through the hole. Tie. Nice and simple. And then I'm going to take that really long and I'm just going to twist it around my skewers a little bit. And this keeps them from folding in on themselves because I don't want it to do this. And this is actually a weaving step. So I'm going to go over that one. Then I'm going to go under this one. And then I'm going to go over and then under I'm going to move all this out of the way as I go. See that? It doesn't look very tidy, but trust me, you'll be glad you did this. And then once I've gone over and under one time, I'm going to go from over here. I'm going to cross over in the middle. Go underneath like that. And then I'm going to go up here, cross over, and then come up on the opposite end from the underneath. Again, this is just the way I'm doing it. If you want to do it another way, go for it. And now to secure that there, so that all my little weaving here didn't just go to waste, I want to pull it nice and tight. And I'm going to go under one more time. But this time, I'm going to leave it loose up here. See how it's nice and loose? So when I come up, see, I've got this loop right here. See my loop? Yep. I'm going to come up and I'm going to go through my loop just like we did a minute ago. And I'm going to pull. Oh, I got my gold yarn in there, so I'm going to just pull that out before I make it tight. Pull. And I'm going to do that one more time. Under. Around. Under. Around. Through my loop one more time. Pull it nice and tight. And now that's not going to fold. See how now I've got all that cord hanging down. Look at that. So that's where you'll hang it to a tree or on your porch or in your bedroom. And you've got this nice crossed skewers hanging down. So that's it, right? No, of course not. We've got our dowels and our charms. So I want to show you the dowels. You can leave the dowels plain. That's totally okay. These are plain. This one I experimented and I wrapped it with blue cord, with some navy blue cord. And I was just like, I wonder if that would look pretty. And guess what? It does. Now, the issue with something like this is oftentimes the weight, if we put weight on one end and not on the other, then we're going to have one end up and one end down. Blah, blah, blah. And I like it when things hang kind of even. So what I'm going to do is on the last color of each, look, see, I made this one way too long. So my last color is like really, really short. So I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use the second to last color on this one. On the last yarn out, I'm going to tie a dowel at the end of each of that last cover. And it's going to provide some balancing weight so it doesn't wobble a whole bunch. And I'm just going to do it again. Everyone will be able to tie their shoes when they're done because we're going to use the shoe tie thing. We're going to cross, put the rabbit through the hole, tie it tight, and then one more time. Cross, through the hole, tie it tight, boom, look at that. And I'm going to do that here on this side, the very last one. And you can put, if you want to wait and put your dowels on at the end so you can put bells or whatever on this last yarn, you can. But I have so much yarn here, I'm not worried about having somewhere to put all that other stuff. So on these, it's just going to be my dowels, and I'm fine with that. One, cross, through the loop, and knot. This part's pretty quick. This blue is the last one on this side, so I'm going to tie it around, cross, through the loop, tied, nice and tight, cross, through the loop, tight, nice and tight. And then this last one here is the brown. Cross, through the loop, tight, cross, through the loop, tight. There we go, look at that. So now when I hold it up from the middle, we got a little bit of weight on each end. It's still gonna move because it's not a ton of weight. So like if I want this one to come down a bit, maybe I'll put more bells and embellishments on this end. So let me just show you real quick how to do your bells and embellishments on one of your cords. So I'm gonna use this green cord as an example here. And I've got my embellishments. And everybody's got one of these. Isn't this pretty? Look at that. It's like a little snow globe or Christmas ornament. I love it, with little orange stars in it. You're gonna have a bunch of they're gonna be different colors and everything, but they're the same style. So you put your cord through the hole at the top of your little embellishment here, just like that. Now, if you put it through at the end, your embellishment is at the end of the cord. But if you want your embellishment to be like halfway up your cord and you want it to stay halfway up your cord, you can just put it, see how I have it about halfway up, and then at that spot where I want it is where I'm going to tie the beginning of my shoelace through all the way up there. So I still have a nice long tail at the end. And now my embellishment is not at the very bottom, it's halfway. So I can actually add another embellishment at the bottom, or I can leave it plain. Totally up to you. I'm going to put a little bell, a little pink bell here. I'm going to go through the green, and I'm going to put this one down here at the bottom. Now, if I decide, oh, I want the pink bell all the way up here at the top of the green, well, since we already put our little ornament here, we can't really go all the way up unless we take the ornament off. So if you're wanting something high close to the skewers, you need to start with that one and then do the one halfway, then do one at the end. Don't start from the end and work up to the skewers. Start at the skewer and work down. Cross, through, tie. And you can do 2 of them to make sure it's nice and tight if you want. These will hold pretty well because they're small. There we go. And look at that. Now I have a bell and an ornament on my green. And so you can continue and do all of your embellishments, or you can stop. You can only do a couple. It is totally up to you. This works kind of like a wind charm. So when it's windy, those bells will make a little dingling, you know, and it'll make a little noise and everything, which is awesome to most people. But there are some places that you might not want this to be if it's going to be windy and it's going to make a bunch of noise. So before you hang your Fae attractor at your house, you need to make sure that your parents or guardians or whoever you live with approve wherever you're hanging it, okay? Another thing to keep aware of is animals. So if you have a dog that can reach it, they're going to be attracted to it, or a cat, they're going to be attracted to this hanging. So be aware that we want to keep it out of the reach of animals. This is not pet safe. It's not a toy for your pets to play with, okay? So don't hang this over your cat and try to get him to play with it, okay? I know you were thinking about it. I believe in you. You can do this. Don't. Okay. So as we know, the Fae are attracted to colors and pleasant sounds, and anytime like humans are nice to them, and these are of course the good Fae, not the bad ones, not the ones we learned about that we wouldn't want anywhere near us. This actually also works as a detractor for all of the bad fairies because they don't like this kind of stuff. So they're going to stay away. So it actually keeps the bad fairies away and it encourages the good fairies to come. All right. So congratulations on making a Fae attractor. I would love to see what your finished project looks like. Please share your finished projects on Facebook. We would love to see them. All of them, your dragon headdresses, your unicorn stress balls, your troll headbands. I would love to see all of your projects that you're working on. And don't forget that we have a survey attached to this video that please, if you can, or have an adult do, just fill out the survey. It takes like half a minute and it really gives us an idea of what everybody thinks of what we're doing and what we could maybe do in the future. I hope everybody is doing a great job with their summer reading. Don't forget to go to the website, tinyurl.com/OCLreads21. And let us know how many minutes you've read and when you're finished with the program so that we can get you your finishing prizes and get you entered into the grand prize drawing for your age group. This has been an amazing summer, and I can't wait for the rest of it. And I can't wait to hear from all of you and how you're enjoying this year's Imagine Your Story summer reading program. Bye.